Good morning, everyone. In today's class, let us start advanced data structures. So, Unit 1 is Introduction to C++. Okay, before starting the syllabus, let us first discuss the difference between C and C++ programming. Already you would have studied C programming during your first semester, right? So, let us see the difference between C and C++, then we will move into the syllabus. So the first term how we are going to differentiate is based on the language type. So as you have studied, C programming is a procedural programming, or in other words we can say it as procedure oriented programming, whereas C++ is procedure and object oriented programming language, right? So the second difference is in terms of approach. C is a top down approach. C++ follows bottom up approach. So why we are saying top down and bottom up approach? If you take the C programming, your main program will be immediately after the header files, right? So wherever we have the main program in our coding part, the control will directly move to the main program. It will enter into the main function and then it will be calling the functions whatever it is, right? So in C programming, everything will be inside the main program. So that is why we are saying it follows top-down approach. Whereas in C++, the main program may be at the bottom of the program, right? So from where we used to go for the functions. So in the beginning itself, we will be defining the class and all the functions will be defined maximum, right? So we used to say that C++ follows bottom-up approach. The third difference is based on the driven type. So C follows function driven, whereas C++ follows object driven. Everything is based on the object access, right? In C programming, whatever modules we have, we used to split it as a function and we used to call that. But in C++, everything can be accessed using the object. The next difference is the input-output function. So you already know C programming, the input-output functions are scanf and printf functions, right? In C++, the functions which are used are cin and cout. Cin and cout operators are used for input-output function. And the number of keywords in C programming is 32 keywords. In C++, it is 52 keywords. Next, let us come for the header file. So in C programming, the header file is standard input output.h, stdio.h. You all can remember that in the beginning, in the include files place, we used to keep hash include stdio.h, so standard input output.h. But in C++ programming, the header file is iostream.h, input output stream.h. And the last difference is in terms of memory allocation. So the memory allocation is in C programming, we will be using malloc and calloc, memory allocation and contiguous allocation. These two functions are used for dynamic memory allocation and free function is used for memory deallocation, right? In C++, we will be using new and delete operators for memory allocation and deallocation. So to allocate a dynamic memory at runtime, we will be going for new operator. And to delete a memory, we will be going for delete operator, right? For deallocation. Okay. So now let us move on for the next thing. So the difference between Python and C++. So already during first year, second semester, you would have studied Python programming, right? So let us again compare Python before started learning C++. So Python, first thing we need to think about the coding part, right? So it is very easy to write Python programming and it has very less number of lines, right? Whereas the C++ programming has large number of lines. Of course, similar like our C programming, C++ also comprises of large number of lines, but all the programming part can be divided into several modules in C++. Since the syntax is very minimum in the case of Python, it has very less number of lines. And the second difference is in terms of garbage collection. Python supports automatic garbage collection, whereas C++ does not support for garbage collection. The third difference is in terms of compilation, right? So since the Python uses interpreter, so here C++ is similar like our C programming. It is pre-compiled. First we will be compiling the program and then we will be executing the program, right? In the case of Python, directly we'll go for execution. So there itself the interpreter will take care of compilation as well as execution of the program. The next difference is in terms of speed. Python is slower since it uses interpreter, right? During runtime only it is going to determine the data type. As you can remember in Python, while writing the program, we won't specify the data type, right? So automatically it should be detected. Whereas in C++, it is faster in speed. Why? Because already we are compiling the program, right? The next difference is in terms of syntax. So if it is Python program, the syntax can be remembered easily. Why? Because lots of syntax has been reduced. It is almost like normal English human language writing, right? So easily we can remember the Python syntax. Whereas C++, we have lots of predefined syntax and we need to follow certain structure. The last difference is efficiency. So Python programming is easy to maintain and Python is object oriented and simpler to use. Whereas C++ is less clean and manageable in comparison with Python. So maintaining the program coding is a bit difficult in case of C++, right? So these are some of the basic differences. Still we can differentiate lots of things between Python, C++ and C programming. But these are the basic concepts which I want to show the difference. Okay, now we'll move on to introduction to C++. So as you all know that C programming was introduced by Dennis Ritchie in the early 1970s and Python was introduced by Guido van Rossum and it was released during 1991, right? It was developed in the late 1980s but it was released during 1991. Similar like that, C++ was introduced by Jarne Straudstrup at AT&T Bell Laboratories during early 1980s. And the C++ programming, it is an extension of C programming with some additions of all the basic concepts which we are going to discuss in the syllabus. So the C++, apart from C programming, some important facilities has been added. They are the class concept, inheritance, function overloading and operator overloading. So these are some of the things additionally included and it is extension of a C programming. And some of the applications of C++ are, it is used in real-time systems, simulation and modeling and object-oriented databases. The AI and expert systems also, C++ programming are in use in neural networks and parallel programming, etc. Okay, let us see how the software evolution has taken place. So we have the initial language or the machine language which is nothing but ones and zeros, right? The ones and zeros are the machine level languages. Next we have an enhancement called assembly level language. Later on we have procedure oriented programming language. So the example is C programming. And the extension of that we have object oriented programming language. So we can call C++ and Python, they are the object oriented programming language. So this is how the software evolution takes place. Okay, then we need to see about the structure of your C++ program. So you would have studied the structure of C program. It has certain structure like a documentation section, link section, main program, variable declaration part and sub-functions, etc. Right? Similar to that, C++ follows certain structure. So the first thing, it will have the include statements. So the include statements are the header files. As we have discussed, C++ uses iostream.h. And then we have class declaration part. So this is important thing we have in C++, class declaration part. And then we have class function definition. Then at the end we will be having the main program. right? Since we have the main program at the end, whenever the program has been executed, the control will directly come to the main program. From the main program, all the functions and variables will be accessed with the help of objects. So that is why we are calling it as bottom-up approach, right? The control will be transferred from bottom to top. So we are calling it as bottom-up approach. So this is the structure of C++. Okay. So since we spoke about C++ is an procedure as well as object-oriented programming. So already we know what is meant by procedure-oriented programming, but we doesn't know about object-oriented programming, right? So the object-oriented approach has been found to remove some of the flaws or some of the drawbacks encountered in procedural approach. So this object-oriented paradigm will tie the data more closely with the functions. Here more preference will be given to the objects. So the entire program will be divided into several modules. So each module will be having its own data and function. And each module we are going to call them as class. And each and every class will be having the object. With the help of the object, we can access this particular data or the function which is required during execution. Okay, so this is how we are going to follow the object-oriented programming. So OOPS allows decomposition of a problem into number of entities called objects. And then it builds the data and function around these objects. So all these objects belongs to one separate classes. Right? So each class will be having its own data member and function. And then from the main program, we can access this data and function of a particular class with the help of the object which has been created.